Welcome to the Put On Waivers Media Group, home of the Put On Raiders podcast and the Student Body Right podcast. This is your place for the best breakdowns and the best insight for those who fight on and bleed silver and black. Now, here are your hosts, Dwayne Douglas and Ryan Holmes.
And welcome, everybody, to the glorious episode of the Put On Raiders podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, along with Ryan Holmes, and we are podcasting on the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. A beautiful day, a little overcast today out here in Southern California. Ryan, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. I got sunshine, no overcast down here.
Yeah, we're good. And the SD is overcast right now. Overcast. RTPOW podcast is my Twitter handle, and RHOLM22 is Ryan's. Ryan, any off the top of your head, any really intriguing things before we get into the rundown that happened this week for the Raiders that kind of sparked your
for the Raiders specifically? Not really. Hearing about the comment on Sue possibly coming over, and that's kind of been ballied back and forth for the last 3 or 4 years. Every year he's a free agent. The picture of him with Charles Barkley in his Raiders uniform as a kid always shows
is that not
Twitter.
The best picture in the world? Him and Charles Barkley to get together. That's hilarious.
We talked about it last week. I think they're going to add another body to the defensive interior, and he makes a lot of sense. It's probably going to, I'm thinking he's going to want. I looked at his contract the last 3 years. We'll talk about that later on in the segment. Kind of what he's going to be looking for, kind of similar to. I don't know if you saw Jadeveon Clowney re-sign with Cleveland today.
Yes,
1 year, $10 million. So we'll see. I don't believe any of the stuff coming out now that he turned down $14, $15 million a year, multi-year deals from other teams to go back to Cleveland and take 1 year deal. So I think that's just agent talk right there.
I love how agents say they kind of save face with that when they do that because they can do that with every player. Nobody can back check the players the teams who had the quote unquote $14 million situations. Today we're going to kind of go around next couple of weeks as we get into June. Kind of a little bit of a dead period, but the Raiders do have some money coming up, so we're going to see if they're actually going to do something with that cash coming forward on June 1st. But we got to take a peek at some of the teams in the division. The division is highly competitive. They have some really good quarterbacks in this division, some really talented defenders on every team in the AFC West. So we'll kind of go through that, and we'll start off in Los Angeles with the Chargers here. And just starting off with the draft real quick. We both like their first round pick. Really good interior lineman. I think he played one game at tackle last year, but I think they're going to use him. They're going to use Zion Johnson as a guard inside. You can't really fault them for trying to protect their quarterback, and maybe he can help them become more diversified in their run game as well too. Austin Eckler is there. He's always been a threat to catch the ball and run the ball out of the backfield. Thoughts about Zion Johnson?
No, I think he's a good fit there. They need help along the offensive front. If you look at the last 2 years, what the Chargers have done in the first round, they've taken linemen. They took Rashawn Slater last year to protect Herbert. Now they take Zion to lock up interior again to protect Herbert and open up lanes in the running game. So now you've used a lot of assets to fortify that offensive line because you have that quarterback back there on a rookie deal, and you're going to need to protect him because he looks like he's a franchise guy that's going to be there for the next 10 years. Just kind of quick notes. I looked at the Chargers draft. The 4 things that popped in my head. Number 1, protect Herbert. Obviously, Slater and Johnson. We've talked about that. They also took Jamiri Sawyer out of Georgia. They got big left / guard. I actually think he has a chance to play some right tackle for them. He's a big dude. He's a force in the running game. Yeah. So, he could probably play interior guard. I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up at right tackle at some point this year for those guys. So that's another lineman they took. Another number 2 thing that stands out about the Chargers draft, they're adding versatile defensive backs for Brandon Staley's system. They took a safety in the 3rd round of JT Woods. If you go down the line, they took a couple of corners, Josiah Taylor out of Wake Forest, and I think it's Dion Leonard out of Ole Miss. They both ran 4.39. They're both speed guys. They're both probably going to battle for a spot in special teams. But, hey, they took 2 cracks at it in the later rounds with some guys that can run, and they took a safety. So those are the two things that stood out to me. And clearly adding a running back for Eckler. Eckler seems to be hurt a lot. So they go out and get Isaiah Spiller. So they have another back in the backfield. I don't think they like what they have in Roundtree and Kelly as the two backups. And then the biggest surprise, I think, from the Chargers draft, no edge rusher, no wide receiver, no interior linebacker, which were all kind of needs for them. I know they added Mack with Bosa, but they don't have a lot of depth behind them. They lost Fackrell. They lost Nwaso away, who went to, I believe, Seattle. So those are some of the things that I thought when I looked at their draft specifically. But clearly they want to protect the quarterback, and they want to have as many DBs as they can to run that system that Staley wants to run.
You mentioned the defensive ends that we're kind of surprised that they didn't take one. Bosa and Mack, obviously tremendous players, but they have been guys who have spent some time all on the sidelines due to injury. So, not having a lot of depth there could be something to watch for as well. They come into this season with Asante Samuel at one corner and JC Jackson at the other corner. So they're doing what, you should do when you have a quarterback under a rookie deal. They're sitting there saying, we're going to build this roster while we don't have to pay him big money. And that's what they've done in these off seasons. And I think that, one of the things that I look at this roster and I say to myself too is, in this Joe Lombardi system, he wants to kind of throw the ball short, get the ball out of their hands. But, the guys like Palmer, guys like Guyton, can one of those guys step up to be that deep threat for this team? That Mike Williams, that Keenan Allen are going to do that underneath stuff. They don't have they have Gerald Everett now at tight end. They kind of go back and forth with their tight ends every year. But can one of those guys step up and be a deep threat for this team consistently? Maybe not have like the big catch numbers, but be one of those guys, Ryan, who has those those huge numbers as far as average yards per catch.
Yeah, kind of like Aguilar did for the Raiders 2 years ago. Yeah, go out there, 40 catches, 16, 17 yards a catch. I think they don't have that guy on this roster, and I think what you're seeing is let's beef up the offensive front. Let's get some versatility in the backfield with Spiller and Eckler. Let's act like we're going to run the ball and try to get the safeties to come down and get an 8-man box. And then we're going to take our shots in certain downs and distances against some fronts or some defensive coverages that we anticipate, more so than they're just going to take shots down the field. So they're going to be calculated shots down the field because I don't think they have that guy that's going to win consistently one-on-one on the outside. But if they can run the ball at all, you're going to force defenses to have to come down and stop the run, and now you take your shots. And Herbert can throw it 60 yards on a line. So I think they're going to, like I said, they're going to have to run the ball to take those shots this year.
Yeah, no question about that. So Rolando Hill, if you remember him, he's going to be the defensive coordinator along with Brandon Staley. That's kind of the same thing like the Raiders are going to have with Mick Lombardi. He's going to be the OC, but it's going to be Josh McDaniels' offense. So he comes from Vic Fangio's. Obviously, this is going to be Staley's deal here, and this is going to be a big deal for them because they have to establish themselves as a defensive team. People expect this team when you look at the names, you look at Sebastian Joseph Day, you look at Jerry Tiller, you look at Bosa and Mack. I mean, those guys, they expect this team to be able to function highly at a high level defensively. Do you like the Kenneth Murray, Drew Tranquill inside linebacker? I mean, I don't like it either. That's why I was kind of surprised they kind of jump on something there to kind of fix it, because I think they could have waited for the secondary.
Yeah, that's the kind of hole in this team, because you have those edge rushers that can get up the field and create pressure. You have the guys on the outside that can lock guys down, but the first thing you're going to have to do is protect the field. There's going to be quick shots to the running back, to the tight ends, underneath coverage. And that's where they're going to struggle. And that's what teams are going to game plan to do, because they're not going to take 5 and 7 step drops against Bosa and Matt coming off the edge. So do they drop Derwin James down into like a nickel backer position to help with that underneath coverage? Do they trust one of these younger safeties, Gilman or Woods, the kid they took, to play more deep? And how are they going to play the cat and mouse game when they get into nickel and dime defenses and teams are taking the intermediate routes or the underneath crossing routes, and because those two linebackers aren't going to cover anybody. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. They fortified the front to try to stop the run. Tillery Johnson, Sebastian Joseph Day. They went out and got the rookie. They took a kid in the 5th round out of UCLA, Agbanya, who's a run stopper. He only has 4.5 sacks in his college career in 4 years. So he's in there to stop the run. So we'll see what they do. I do have a lot of questions on how they're going to handle the slot. I assume they're going to use Samuel there primarily because they still have Michael Davis outside, and they have Bryce Callahan, who came over from Denver, who has played for Staley when Staley was with the Broncos. But what are they going to do with those linebackers? It'll be interesting to see how they're going to cover tight ends, slot receivers, crossing routes, and how they scheme that up.
Yeah, you would think that that's like the first thing people are going to do, because they're going to say, I mean, if you can't cover that middle of the field, why do I have to push the ball against JC Jackson? Like, why do I have to test Asante Samuel if I don't have to? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if I can get 15, 16, 8 yards a clip on that, that's going to be something teams are going to do continuously. That's the first thing I thought of when I looked at this depth chart, is like, ooh, I mean, that's Waller week 1, Renfro week 1, like, the drop Devontae down there in the slot for week 1. Like, I mean, it's going to be something to see if they can handle that. I'm sure the Raiders are all over that part of it too. He's really good, the Derwin James, right? He's really talented. Do you trust like that? What do you think his biggest attribute is, and what do you think his biggest weakness is, as far as he goes, as far as the play? Because I know we see the name immediately, we know, like, Derwin James, but like, what's the thing that kind of sticks out to you when you hear people talk about Derwin James?
Well, just the size and the athleticism and the ability to run and cover guys at his size is hard to find. So he's going to match up with the bigger outside receivers. He can play the slot against the big slot. He's not going to go in there and kind of little shifty guys, but then he can also take away the tight end. He can rush the passer. He can play too high. Like, he has coverage skills for a guy that size. He's not a liability if you want to play cover 2 or cover 4 or anything like that. It's just durability is the biggest question mark. Yeah. He seems to always get nicked up. Last year, he was able to get through most of the season. It's just, can you keep him on the field for 17 games? And is he going to be there when you need him? If you're going to make a deep playoff run, 20, 21 games, if you have to play, 3 playoff games and get to the Super Bowl. I'd love to have that be the question, because he checks pretty much every other box.
He's good
as far as a defensive playmaker. So he can intercept the ball. He can force fumbles. He can rush the passer. He can cover. Anyone that you have that you want to run out there that's a bigger guy, like I said, he can cover him. So we'll see. He's an interesting chess piece. I would think, looking at this depth chart, you're going to see him playing a little bit more of that underneath, intermediate, middle of the field coverage this year, because they can't trust either one of those linebackers.
And I would say even also with the linebackers too, Troy Reader he was with the Rams last year. The guy almost single-handedly lost the NFC Championship game for the Rams. So I don't understand like the concept of what they want to do as far as coverage linebackers go. Like, I mean, you got to have people who can cover linebacker. I mean, if you can't cover line as a linebacker now, it's like you're just wasted space. You're gonna play one down. And you can't. It's hard to hold a roster spot when you run down. I just remember every time, the Niners were making plays. It was on Reader. They just destroyed him in that game. I could just see teams doing that too if he has to end up playing. Because I mean, if he's a running back of linebackers, he's definitely going to end up playing at some point. Interesting thing about Spiller, they could the running back who they picked up in the draft. They reminds the comps have been like Jeremy Hill, Sony Michel. Sony Michel's they're just solid guys, not great. Does fumble the ball a lot, so we'll have to see if that's something that it kind of takes him, kind of follows him to the National Football League as well. Because that was a problem for him in college during that time period as well. So the Chargers pretty much in a nutshell there. Just like every team, they have talent in this division. They have some pieces that anybody would love to have on their team. But they also have some holes that no team is perfect, and that's what the salary cap is designed to do, to make sure there's parity in this league.
Yeah, I think they match up pretty well defensively against the Chiefs. I think this is a team that's going to play a ton of big nickel. And if one of those two linebackers gets hurt, there is no depth on that roster. It's Nick Niemann, Troy Reeder, Damon Lloyd, and some undrafted for college free agents. And I don't even trust the two starters, let alone the depth behind them. So big nickel, a lot of dime, a lot of exotic coverages. If you can line up and run the football at this defense, that's how you're going to beat them. Keep the ball away from that offense, wear this defense down, run between the tackles. And I think the Raiders under Josh McDaniels are going to be multiple and be able to do that. So I think they match up better defensively to try to stop an aerial team like the Chiefs. But if the Chiefs decide they want to run the ball this year and they have the linemen to do it, with some of those guys they took last year, not having Hill, I don't know. This defense is going to struggle to stop the run. I have a belief, even though they did make some additions.
So last year was the Achilles heel. That they couldn't stop the run, and we don't see like that ability to stop the run coming up this year. That's why I thought that maybe that first pick in the draft would have been a guy like Jordan Davis, only because I don't love Jordan Davis, but like we don't on this program we don't love Jordan Davis, but at least to stop the run. First round, because if you're giving up 6, 7, you got to earn the right to pass rush, and they may struggle earlier on to earn the right to pass rush in going against some of these teams out here. I'm gonna roll. I always like, as on the show, I always roll through some questions during the show. Let's see here. Why do people think Jesse Bates is available?
Because Jesse Bates says he doesn't want to sign and play on a franchise tag, but the Raiders are not trading for Jesse Bates. They're not giving up the assets. They're not giving the contract. As good of a player as Jesse Bates is, you have Trayvon Merritt. Let him develop. He's going to be an all-pro player in the next year or two, in my opinion. You don't need to go spend the money and assets on Jesse Bates. Yeah,
I'm seeing a lot of hashtag Bates Motel on Raider Nation, and that's just like a little bit. I mean, it's just not. It's not happening. It's not happening. And listen, it cost these guys so much money to hold out that it's going to be like he's going to end up showing up. And to me, it's interesting thing to me is that the Bengals have been a cheaper organization for a long time, but when you have a team that is ready to possibly win a Super Bowl, you gotta fork over the cash and get that going for your team. Let's see here. So Bradbury is not here with the Raiders. He's going to be with the Eagles. It's kind of like who was the safety last year who was the safety that they drafted for 1 year last year? Was it Al Harris? Was it Al Harris?
No, Al Harris went from the Eagles he was a free agent or he went from the
to
the Eagles.
But he was a guy who I remember I wanted for the Raiders. I was just like, and then when you saw him on tape and you saw him when he got signed for, it was like a 1 year deal. Like I got signed 1 year deals. But Bradbury,
I believe it was Al Harris.
Yeah, Harris. Yeah. So Bradbury has a 1 year deal with the Eagles. Stays on the East Coast. So I guess according to the agent, 14 teams called and wanted James Bradbury. So, of course, in typical Raider Nation spirit on Twitter, I saw all the bad red zone numbers and how many times he got beat, all these things like that, as far as that goes. But it's a loss. Listen, I'm not sure how much of a run they made at him, but the Raiders still do need an established corner on this football team. I do like Rockison, but that's 1 year. But they not getting Bradbury is a little bit of a hit, but we'll have to see what happens after June 1st.
Yeah, if you just look at the contract he got from the Eagles, it's 1 year, $10 million. But if you break it down, the key numbers, he got a $6.2 million signing bonus. The base salary is only 1.03, and they actually put 4 voidable years on this. The cap hit this year is only 2.27. The Eagles are going to wear some dead cap, whether he's on this team or not, moving forward over the next 4 seasons. So we'll see what happens. They had to get really creative to fit him under the cap. Clearly, Patrick Graham knows him. He coached him. He knows what he has left. And if the Raiders weren't willing to give this contract, I would have to believe that Graham wasn't a huge fan of Bradbury.
Yeah. And I'm sure as soon as Bradbury gets the interception, somebody posted to Twitter, hashtag Raider Nation. What are you doing as far as that goes? So interior with the Raiders. So you got a guy like Vernon Butler, you got Jonathan Hankins, you got Andrew Billings, Neil Farrell. I don't know why I can't say that name. Matthew Butler, and Kyle Pico. So inside that's the inside of the Raiders, but obviously you want a little bit more. And then Sue and Dominican Sue is a guy who is, wearing, Vegas sweatshirts and stuff like that and tweeting stuff like that. I think there's a guy we talked about before. What are your thoughts about him possibly coming to the Raiders here? Because I think he's got a guy who would really help the Raiders interior, played in big games, veteran, knows how to get it done inside pressure for the Raiders.
Yeah, it's going to come down to the pass rush because when he comes in, he can be violent with his hands. He can stop the run, but he gives you tremendous pressure on the interior. Now, he's not the same player he was in Detroit. He's getting up there in age. He's in his mid-30s, but he's a guy that if you, let's say they go to a four-man front on a passing down, and if you can put, Nichols out there with Sue, with Crosby and Jones, that's pretty impressive. Those guys, you don't have to blitz. You're going to get pressure. They have enough bodies here where they don't need a ton of run out of him or mileage on early downs. They can kind of play him to what would suit some pass rushing strengths and then use him on crucial rundowns when they need stops. So I think they have enough bodies here to rotate around, but he'd be a good piece to add to this team. Like you said, to give you pressure, because right now they're going to be counting on Nichols to provide a ton of interior pressure. He's really the only guy out of all those guys. Maybe Butler gets some snaps. But it's basically Nichols. When you go to a nickel defense or a passing defense, because you're not really going to get much out of Billings or Hankins or Farrell or Vickers or Petco on a passing down. So they still need another interior rusher. Looking at his contract, he hasn't made a ton of money the last 3 years. 2019, he made $9.25 million. 2020, $8 million. 2021, $9 million. So that's what he's probably looking for, somewhere $8 to $9 million. If the Raiders can give him a 1 year, let's say $9 million deal, maybe they add a voidable year or two to lower the cap number, but they can definitely afford him as of June 1. They're going to have plenty of cap space and they can get creative. So it would be a good fit for them. Like I said, he's not going to be counted to play every down. They don't need him to play every down. They just need him to get in there and get after Herbert and Mahomes and Russell Wilson on second and third down and passing down.
Yeah. Lee from San Diego, would you, if you had a chance to get a safety or a corner, which one would you go after? Right now, looking at their corners, I just gotta go. Because I think some people are thinking about going with three safeties on the field at times. I think at this point, if Mullen is the other corner, if Anthony Everett is the other corner, if I get an established guy, I kind of want an established guy.
I think I would take whoever the better player is. If it's a safety, then be it. If it's a corner, take him. But I still think they're light at safety as well. I can't trust Deron Harmon. He might be the slowest safety in the league right now. We might be having Reggie Nelson touchbacks without the interceptions if we have to get a ton of snaps out of him. I don't trust Abram to play high in a majority of snaps. Like, he needs to play underneath that third safety. So to me, I would take either whoever the better player is that's going to make the biggest impact, whether it's safety or corner. I would take that.
Yeah, makes sense. So we had a question this week for our show, the biggest defensive questions we have, biggest offensive questions we have, and I'll go first with one of my defensive questions here. Is in this defense, these defensive linemen have to be able to hit their spots and stop the run. So, but if they don't stop the run, that's where that's one of the issues in this defense that Graham runs. If you do stop the run or hold them, if you're competitive in the defensive run game, then he can do the things he wants to do on the back half to hopefully create some interceptions, give those defensive ends, Jones and Crosby, to get to the quarterback. But you do have to stop the run, and I think that's one of the biggest things that for me, it doesn't change football. Football can be football is not that complicated. People can make it that way sometimes, but if you can stop the run, and these teams in the division, I'm not sure if they're going to commit to the run. Maybe Denver will, but the Raiders have to come out and establish that interior and stop the run. And I think that's one of the biggest things that Jonathan Hankins and Butler and all these guys they drafted are going to have to do.
Yeah, it's going to come down to how fast can these guys pick up the system, how quickly are they going to understand their assignments. It's the first year in a new system, and you have 3 divisional opponents the first 5 weeks, and you have the Chargers right out the gate. So these guys are going to be counted on to know exactly what they're supposed to be doing defensively, communicate, and all that stuff week 1. I think my biggest concerns on this defense, and we kind of hit on them earlier in the show, interior defensive line, as far as who's going to rush the passer on second and long, third down, 1st and 20 after a penalty. I don't know if they have those guys on the roster on the inside. And then the secondary, whether it's the safety or the corner, what does Nate Hobbs do in this defense? Like, he's kind of the guy I've circled this year. I have the biggest question mark on. I know Raider fans love him based on his PFF grading, but he's going to be playing a totally different defense than he played last year, and he's going to be asked to do a lot more. And can he do it? I have questions there. And then where's the depth at nickel? Like, if he doesn't play as well as he did last year, who do they have? Darius Phillips, Crevon LeBlanc? Like, they don't have anyone really that's going to come in other than maybe Phillips. You give him a chance, but there's not a ton of depth at nickel. There's not a ton of depth on the outside, and there's not a ton of depth at safety. So I would say Tyreek Gillespie as well. So Gillespie and Hobbs in the secondary are kind of the 2 guys I want to watch the most during training camp. So those will kind of be my defensive questions. I think they're fine at linebacker. They have a ton of depth this year.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm actually excited about linebackers. So linebacker should be interesting there. And then also, I mean, Rocky Sin. I mean, like they trade him for why can't I remember his name? But they traded
Ngakoue.
They traded him for Ngakoue. He's a guy who, listen, had a good year. Well, he's playing. He has all the impotence in the world to have a good season. So, he obviously wants a big contract next year. It's possible for him to get it if it's not from the Raiders, from somebody else. So he has an opportunity here to really make some big moves here with the Raiders here on defense for them. But in the interior, obviously, and then obviously the cornerback situation and safety as well are things where we have to kind of worry about. And the Raiders are not trading for Jesse Bates, so you can't sweat that. Laker Lover on Instagram wants to know, he just has Jonathan Abram ? And that's basically how we view Jonathan Abram as well. Like, I don't know if they got another safety and you can play him, and they play 3 safeties, and you could play him in the box and he can just go attack, then that's something different. But we've seen this. I don't want to get mad at Jonathan Abrams when he blows something in coverage, because we know what he is. So I don't really see him having a huge impact in as far as in coverage. He has to do it from almost like that extra linebacker spot.
And can he stay healthy? Like, that's the other. It's a 17-game season. He hasn't done it yet. Like, so let's say he's counted to play 90% of the defensive snaps, and you're playing him in too high coverage in a lot of those snaps. On how active he's going to be is he going to get hurt? Is he going to do something that's going to cause him to miss 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games? And now you have no depth behind him. So not only do you have concerns about his ability to play this coverage,
yes,
health is always the concern too. So it's 2 major red flags on the position in this defense. You have to have. You cannot run this defense without 2 safeties that can be interchangeable and disguise coverages, and move around and play cover 2 and play cover 4 and play cover 1. And can he come down and play cover 1 cross? Can he do all these things he's going to be asked to do defensively? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think he can do a lot of these things. I just, he's a.
I hope he does.
I hope he does too. I mean, that's the plan. I mean, he's just a safety who's born in the wrong era. Like, he would have been a beast back in the day. Like, but I just
he would have been a Pro Bowler.
Oh, in a Pro Bowler, I mean, him and he probably would have been, sitting there with John Lynch or Ronnie Lott. Who knows? But I don't know right now. Offensive biggest question marks right now. So I think I'm gonna go out on a limb and say wide receiver set. Like, I don't have a problem with wide receiver, even at the second wide receiver, whether it's Robinson, whether it's Hollins, Cole, Johnson, Stoner, whoever it is, that person is going to be a special teams player who's going to block. and catch an occasional pass. But the slot receiver is Hunter Renfrow. We know about that. Devontae Adams, we know about that as well. The offensive line is where if you struggle here, though, the receivers like Waller, Renfrow, and Adams aren't going to get the ball. So the biggest hole basically is going to be right tackle. And the question is, can they develop some of these guys? I mean, like Alex Leatherwood is, I'll say this, maybe he wasn't a first rounder, but he's an NFL player. So he would have got drafted at least in the first 3 rounds, probably now in that draft. The Raiders overdrafted him. That's what Mayock and Gruden do all the time. But he obviously, I mean, I don't need to see a workout tape. He's obviously gonna work out and do what he has to do to make sure he's ready for the season. But can he be that piece that that guy who mans that right tackle position? Because teams, it's not back in the day where they just had one pass rusher. Teams always have 2 pass rushers, and I think every team in this division has 2 pass rushers on the left and the right side.
Yeah, the easy answer here is right tackle. That's the biggest question mark on the offense, and including that and 2 pass rushers. I mean, they couldn't pick up stunts. They couldn't pick up blitzes. There was a lot of things coming at him, and he was a first-year guy. That's the easy answer. I would agree with you. I think it's wide receiver, but I think it's wide receiver depth. If anything were to happen to Renfrow or Adams, like who on this team is going to go out there and be able to play receiver? Like, is it Keenan Cole, Matt Collins, DJ Turner, Dylan Stoner? Like, there is no depth at the wide receiver position past the first 2 guys. I think Robinson's going to end up starting. I think he's going to be the guy that's going to start when they want to go 3 wide. But behind those guys, there's no young developmental guy. There's no, 2nd, 3rd, 4th round pick waiting in the wings. If something were to happen, that you can run out there. I think there's still, if I was the Raiders, I'd still be looking at the waiver wire. I'd still be looking at cut down day, trying to find younger receivers that you can develop. Because right now you just have, some special teams, some guys, some veterans that have been around the league. You're kind of just trying to plug holes in the boat. And this is where missing on all those draft picks over the last 3, 4, 5 years are starting to show up. They're trying to plug holes with veterans that are going to stick around for a year or 2 and then be gone. And you're going to have a revolving door. So they just start building young depth behind all these guys. And you can say that about a lot of teams. I'm not singling out the Raiders because obviously everyone would be happy to line up Adams, Renfrow, and Waller. We're not arguing that. But I think the question is, if something were to happen, if there was an injury to Renfrow or Adams, that could put a huge monkey wrench in this offense.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely would. I mean, those guys usually play a lot of games. So, but yeah, that's something to think about. And I think that's the reason why they keep signing receivers. They keep signing receivers because I think they're smart they're smart enough to realize that, hey, we got to be careful in this situation, because we can't sit there and just if Renfrow loses a little bit of time here, or if Adams loses a little bit of time. Usually those guys play. Waller has been a guy who kind of misses some time here and there, so we'll have to see what happens there. But it is an easy question. I know some people, I looked on NFL.com, and they said the biggest question was the relationship between Josh McDaniels and Derek Carr. I was like, that's just not the biggest question, dude. That's some of these guys who cover the NFL are lazy. That was just that's not the biggest. Look at the roster, you can tell. And I do think, I think Parham is, I don't know, man. I'm getting vibes that I just get a good vibe about that kid. And I just feel like he is, I'm not trying to push Andre James out the door, but I just feel like he's just everything I read about him from Memphis. I'm trying to also get the offensive line coach for Memphis on the show. But he's a guy who people really have holding in really high regard. And they really feel like he is a guy who's going to come in and, play this year early and like week 1.
Yeah, I think I would pencil him in as a starter week 1. I do have one question for you.
Good.
Josh McDaniels coming from New England. Do you let Hunter Renfrow return punts, knowing how vital he is to this offense this year, or do you try to find another punt returner? Because Julian Edelman returned punts forever.
Yeah. So no, I can't do it. I can't do it.
I can't either.
I can't do it. And
I don't want him to get hurt doing that.
I just can't. It's not worth. It's not worth it. We're gonna fair catch every time. It's not. There's so many. I think the thing about it is, there's so many holding calls on that play, on those plays, on those runs. So what's really the point of doing it? Like how many punt returns have we seen where you get like you get a nice punt return and then boom, it's a holding penalty to bring it all back. Like I just he does so much for them offensively. I'm not taking that risk. I mean, DJ Turner, I've been talking about DJ Turner for a little bit. I like DJ Turner. Hopefully he can make this roster. If he can make this roster, I mean, he could be a guy who can return punts. A lot of times people like to use like cornerback. I remember old school days, a lot of cornerbacks used to be punt returners back in the day, but I'm not touching that. I'm not touching that. Somebody else can do it. Please. I just can't. I can't.
Yeah, I mean,
it's scary. It's scary. I don't want to mess with like there's I understand like New England and so everybody plays special teams and Rodney Harris used to play special teams and stuff like that. Like, but for me, like there's certain players where I just want to stay off of special teams and we'll just keep it like they need to be playing only on downs. And I can't risk any of those guys getting hurt because they're too vital to what the Raiders do. It's not like Madden. You can turn off injuries.
I don't know if Keenan Cole's ever returned punts in the NFL. I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up. But DJ Turner, Kenyon Drake, maybe. He's going to be the kick returner probably. Dylan Stoner if he makes the team. But I'd look long and hard at trying to find one of those like jitterbug quick guys like that can go just back there and make this team as like a fifth or sixth receiver and return kicks. I do not want to see Hunter Renfrow get hurt returning punts.
What is that guy? What is that guy's name from the is it Jakeem Grant?
Grant. Yeah, he's with the Bears. He was with the Dolphins.
He was with the Dolphins for years. I've always wanted that dude because I'm like, dude, just have him be like your fourth receiver. He can return kicks. You don't have to worry about it, and that's the biggest thing he's able to do as far as that goes. We think about the battle between Simpson and Illuminor. The depth chart I have in front of me now says guard. Says Illuminor is playing guard, but you think that you think that's just a head-to-head battle right there to see who comes out on top, right?
Yeah, I hope Simpson can beat him out, but this staff is not going to put up with the technique issues and the penalties and the holdings that Simpson's going to do. So if he doesn't clean that up, Illuminor is going to beat him out for the job.
Yeah.
The offensive line technique last year was brutal across the board.
I don't know how they
James wasn't very good.
Yeah, they were bad.
Simpson wasn't good. Parker wasn't good. It wasn't bad. So I think this they're going to go with the guy that's going to not create a ton of penalties. I am looking up Keelan Cole returned 9 punts in 2020, including a touchdown, 91-yarder. He returned 1 punt last year, and he's returned 15 kicks in his career. So not a ton of kick return experience, but he has a little bit of punt returning experience. So maybe Keelan Cole gets an opportunity back there.
Yeah.
We'll see.
A buddy of mine from work is going to text me after the show airs. He's going to say, "Here you go. There you guys go again. Talk about special teams." I was like, "Yeah, we do. It's important. It's important. We can't. Maybe because the first time we lose a player to special teams, the first thing everybody's going to say, what the hell is going on as far why was he playing special teams?" But we'll see there. Yeah, let me see what else is on this roster here to talk about real quick. Basically the biggest battle is going to be offensive line, so we know that, and defensive tackle. They keep bringing in. They got some. So I did see a interview with Cleveland Farrell, and the guy called him a defensive. And then he said he has to change it to outside linebacker. So I guess he's an outside linebacker now. And where does Kuntz fit here? Where does Kuntz fit on this in this equation?
He's going to play outside backer too. They're basically just going to be pass rushers on third downs. Farrell, that doesn't surprise me. He was never going to get up to the 300 pounds he needed to play interior or defensive end, even in the system as a two-gapper. So they're probably going to lean him out like he did last year, try to get him 255, 260, just play him, 10 to 12 snaps on the outside to give those guys a rest. He should be fine. They're not going to ask him to be in coverage a ton.
Mm-hmm.
The athleticism here might show up as he's going to have to play, he's going to be outside the tackle, basically rushing from a wide end. He doesn't have the speed or the bend to do that. consistently and beat good tackles. So I think Kuntz is probably going to take a lot of his playing time. I don't expect to get much out of Farrell at all, to be honest with you, as an outside
No,
linebacker.
it's all coming. It's all coming to an end. I think we all know. I think we all know the writing on the wall as far as that goes. They just can't cut him and take that huge hit. As far as that goes. Mike from San Marcos talked about a story he saw from Albert Breer, talking about the Raiders and how, I didn't read the story yet, but how impressed he was with the Raiders organization and how this time around Josh McDaniels is doing things really a lot differently, and how impressed they are with it. I mean, okay, so I'll just put it this way. So like, if you this time last year we're doing a show and then you said, hey, we fast forward to May 22nd and you say the Raiders are going to have Chandler Jones and Devontae Adams, I'm going to say how, like, how did Gruden pull that off? How did Gruden pull that off? So obviously this was pulled off because those two guys are in their prime of like, or just in their prime of just like learning how to run an organization. They have a lot of really high level people around in that building. It's a lot of different kinds of mindsets who are just coming together for a common cause. So I do like what I've seen so far. They do have some things there's pieces on the team they got to develop, and they're also, like you said, making up for some of the mistakes of the past, and some of the holes in this roster, and they're trying to fix those things on the fly going into this season.
Yeah, definitely. They're trying to bring this front office into 2022. Yes. Gruden and Mayock talked about it. I don't think they actually did it. The Raiders hired an analytics director. I was trying to find his name. He came over from Chicago, so obviously there's a connection with Champ Bailey. But yeah, they're basically turning over the scouting staff too. They hired, a director of college scouting. They're bringing in scouts from other organizations. New national scout they brought over, Lenny, I think McGill was his name, from the Dolphins. So they're getting the people in the place that they can trust, that know their system, that they've worked with. And going forward, it should be advantageous, especially as we go into next year's draft. I know that's a long ways away, but getting the whole organization aligned on the football side of things was something Gruden and Mayock talked about, but I'm not sure they ever actually did it.
He did say he went to every single organization and saw how they ran it, so he knew how to run it. And then we end up doing what he, did whatever he did. So we'll see what happens as far as that goes. Get anything on? We got a couple questions on Saban and Fisher. Is there anything on that? Anything you want to add to that before we get out of here?
I think the funniest thing was the SEC came out and was like, "Be quiet, like don't tell our secrets. Like we're not, you're not speaking out for the whole conference." But everyone knows it's been going on for years in college football. It shouldn't shock anyone that now that NIL money is involved and boosters are allowed to give money out. I saw that the running back at University of Texas, Bijan Robinson, I think his name is. He was in a Ferrari or a Lamborghini the other day. Just happened to get an NIL deal with a local Lamborghini dealership. But that's what's going to happen when they open this up. We can't get mad at the kids. We can't get mad at the system. It's a free market at this point. You can pay for transfers as you want. So if the Alabama boosters aren't giving them the money to get the players, then so be it. Nick Saban should talk to them. He shouldn't be talking in the public and blaming other coaches for doing what's legal right now. No one's breaking any rules as far as we know.
Yeah, I mean, and to me, like we don't know, and like I would be careful. I would just say this, and I think the SEC coming out and saying cool out is pretty smart, because like, do you really want people to start digging? You really want people to start digging and asking players and stuff like that? And listen, the majority of these college players are not Mario Williams and Jordan Addison. They're not gonna make pro rosters, like especially running back. How many running backs we see we hear about forever, and they never end up becoming anything. So like as far as a pro player goes, they could become something else. So go out there and do it. I mean, I've seen people who are getting NIA deals from like some small schools, and it was like some kid got a kid from Kentucky got one from a horse farm. Like, you know what I mean? Like, hey, I mean, let's say Kentucky Derby out there. I mean, to me, like, go get it. Like, it's not a big, I mean, this is how the rules are set up, and they're taking advantage of it. Learn to play within those rules. And then we'll see what happens as far as that goes.
Yeah, I think Nick Saban, like, singling out guys saying, "Oh, this guy got $400,000 to go
Yeah,
play
I
in
don't like- I
Miami."
don't
Like
like
he's
that.
making $10 million a year. Don't start calling out guys by name. Don't start bemoaning the fact that he got
Yeah.
a couple $100,000 when you're making $10 million a year to coach college football. Now he crossed the line when he went there.
Yeah, that was too much. That was too much. And I mean, people are really upset about, and they try to throw Dion in this all the time, which is like, I was like, the dude's coaching at Jackson State. Like, I mean, like, if you find something illegal, okay, fine. But like, if he's not doing anything illegal, then what's the problem? I don't see what the problem is. All right, cool.
The NCAA is not going to find anything because they're not going to investigate any of these anyway. Because they don't have the employees nor the want to look at and it's going on in every sport. This isn't a football issue. There's kids getting NIL deals in every sport, and they're nowhere going to dig into every one of them.
Exactly. And NCAA is like, NCAA just wants the cash registers, the kids keep coming, the money keep coming in. They're not going to investigate themselves. It's always an issue when you can investigate yourselves. That's investigate yourself. That's always a problem. All right, Ray Nation. See you next time. Deuces.
Sounds good. Take care.
Peace.